there's a few big decisions when it comes to tank now. One of them's really easy. Uh, and that's going for the sword I have. Wait, I'm just not remembering the name of Butcher for some reason. Like Butcher, I think is like objectively the best tank sword because it gives you ult charge super fast. Like I'm gonna lock into things that are for sure for this. For my builds, I've just been kind of doing it as I go and like not really thinking about it too much. But there's on the shield side, you have a good amount of options. So, like, your two big decisions are, do I go with the wall or do I not go with the wall? Like that's the biggest decision with this class. The wall has sturdy, which is an okay perk. It has extra stamina, which is a really good perk. And you take 25% less damage from all elemental sources. Didn't that used to be 50%? I thought that was higher than 25, but no, it might have been 25. This is for PvP tanking, right? Yeah, this is for PvP tanking. PvE tanking is like a whole different thing. It's always been 25%. Okay, for some reason I thought it was more. Like, the inherent thing that's like weird about the wall is like this sounds good and this stam also sounds good, but at the same time, like I can just get like a Gorgon's shield, like a Gorgon tower. And I think it's like usually better. Because you could put sturdy fortification on there. And sturdy fortification with the new SNS, like let me do the SNS tree real quick because it's like pretty simple. You just basically go on everything on this right side, and then you do 3 points on or 4 points on the left. But one with the shield extends like the heck out of sturdy fortification, and it makes it really strong. And I feel like that just makes it better. Wouldn't Palisade be BIS? Okay, yeah, Palisade is better than like the Gorgon one. Like you just basically just go Palisade. Like it's been that way for a long time now. The problem with Palisade is I don't think you get Palisade to 725. I think you only get to 700, which isn't much of an issue. Like the difference between 700 and 725 on a shield is not that much. It's just armor. So 700, I have 142 armor. If I go to 725, I have like 8 more armor. Yeah, you could avoid doing that. Yeah, you could just run this. Just run Palisade. That's a great shield. Oh, is Surefooting locked in on Palisade now? I didn't know that. I thought it was random. Like you can upgrade it. Like I have Surefooting on mine. Is it not upgradable anymore? What did they do to my beautiful shield? No, you can upgrade it. Yeah, no, you can upgrade it. I don't know what's going on with the New World Buddy thing. That looks like what I normally would do. And you could upgrade to 725. That's kind of confusing. I just don't like it does say 700 here, right? Yeah, it does say 700. So I feel like you should be able to select the last perk on here. Yeah, it says 700. It's just blue for some reason. So slash shield ward is generally pretty good. Sturdy fortification I think is slightly better than the wall in theory. The last perk is usually sturdy. You have options though. Like sturdy is pretty good. You can go a defensive shield perk, like fortified shield rush is also really good. Like some people like to go fortified shield rush to go sturdy fortification. They just pop the shield rush during a clump. They get a massive amount of fortify. Sturdy fortification's a massive amount of fortify. It's just like a stam thing where it's like I don't know if you'll have enough stamina to really make it work. Void dark plate, and then you just bump up your HP so much. PTR, do you have a link for one? For a tank one? Do you have a reference tank build? This is just empty, my dude. It's just empty. I can't think about something that's not there. Flail tree wise, I usually go for something like this. I used to go for mitigated protection. I find myself not really shielding on Flail as much anymore. How do I copy the full one? You have to generate a link. So this feels pretty good. You always want smite on your Flail. I prefer Flail tanking at this point over IG tanking. I think leader of the pack is too strong to not go Flail tanking, and the CC is just so strong right now. Like, even though you're not going to be proccing much CC with your shield, it feels too good to, like, pass up because of Barrage. Like, Barrage CC is just so powerful. Last perks on Flail don't really matter very much, to be honest. Like, they literally don't matter. Like, you're just looking for kind of utilitarian perks. Like, gosh, what is even good on Flail at this point? Like, probably refreshing moves okay. It's not that good, though. Like, you're not looking for damage perks in the Flail, right? So this is why I don't really care about it too much. Like, sure footing's okay, because it reduces the push and pull distances. Some people have been looking at doing like refreshing move or refreshing ward flails, but there's not a large list of them because of that, because there's not like a lot of good flail options. I don't think there's any good refreshing ward flails too. Like, there's a couple, but they aren't that insane. That's not obtainable. That's con strength, vicious mortal fortification. Like, that's pretty mid. It has dex on it. Like, you can sacrifice some of the stats. Like, it's not terrible. It just doesn't feel that good. Like, this would honestly be a pretty good option flail wise. Because the idea is that refreshing ward has a weird status on new if you go to New World Buddy, where it actually will proc on your other weapon if you have it. So if I go to perks, I type in refreshing ward, you can see this. It is this, what do you call it, perk? Oh no, it is on active weapon now. That used to be on equip. So if it's on active weapon, that means that if you have refreshing ward on your offhand, that won't work on your other weapon. Okay. So they did fix that. So this refreshing ward flail cook wouldn't be that good. So something like this is okay enough. Maybe smite is a better third perk because it gives you ult charge, or not smite, attunement. Like, a slightly better perk. Doesn't really matter though. Tank gem wise, if you want to optimize it, I don't really love this idea, but the electrified taunt gem apparently gives you a bunch of stamina every time you use like fortified shield rush. Like, every time it ticks, it gives you stamina, so it just makes sense to use that. It just feels a little cheesy. Your amulet should always be onk for tank. Your last slot is usually strike protection. If you could go thrust protection there as well, that's okay. Ring is not super important for this build. You basically just want like hardy on here for the extra stamina. It helps you tank a bit. You want purifying heart on here, and ideally enfeebling. Is it EN? Yeah, it's EN. Because then you apply a decent amount of weaken effects with this build. It just makes them last a bit longer. I don't think there's any exclusive gear that really helps tanks a lot. Some people argue that you can go like Frigid Dawn, and I don't think it's bad for tanks, but it's not personally like what I look to do when I build for tank, because when I die on tank, it's because of two reasons. One, because I have too many debuffs on my bar, or two, because I just took a bunch of AoE damage from detonate for the most part. So like when I'm building this for PvP tank, like it's pretty much always you need to go elemental aversion, especially if you don't run a wall, because that will help mitigate the detonate damage significantly. And then you need to have, well, you don't need to really have conditioning for this build. Like conditioning's nice, but I'm pretty sure I already hit like effective cap. Like if I do a 5-15 split, like I'm pretty much fine with that. I guess I could do like I could do a 0-20 split. And then I can do conditionings to stuff. Like that would be an option. I still am a fan of Invig. Not everyone's a fan of Invig, but I think Invig feels pretty good on tank builds. In terms of other perks that are lock-ins, we need to have the Defender's Resolve perk, I think. Accelerated Resolve. Like that's a really good perk to lock in. I don't think anything else is really mandatory in terms of like perks that you need, and then everything else here is like kind of flexible. So this is where people would argue like, okay, I go Frigid Dawn, right? Because I don't really have another slot that's that good. And some other people would do a conditioning based setup. It seems like conditioning might be the way to go. It just feels a little weird. So like I'd probably do 2 thrust conditioning based off this current setup, or I can go refreshing. That would be the other option. I can go conditioning or I can go refreshing. Would refreshing ever be better than conditioning? I feel like it is. I don't know if I'm like cooking that too much. I feel like I'm not though. Like you definitely could just run 4 refreshing with this build. Like you already have so much defensiveness built into the kit with a 5-15 split with this setup, because you have the shield, and that's just like your slash protection. You have your strike. So like the only thing I need to do is just put in the gems. Like if I do 2 physical gems and put the rest to elemental, like I'm very tanky to everything, especially when I hold shield, because then I'll hit the gem cap. I totally see why people like to go Frigid Dawn with tank though, because it's like, oh wait, dude, I forgot about the best perk for tank. I'm like debating all this stuff and I forgot about health. And that makes my life a lot easier. So health is really good for tank for like one kind of tricky reason. And that's because normally health isn't ideal for builds, because most builds are built to sustain necessarily and not survive burst damage. Tanks are the opposite. They're built to survive burst damage and not sustain. They tend to sustain, but that's because like it's a very like it can sustain on itself if you play it properly, but I don't build tanks as a sustain build. I build tanks as I can survive anything that gets thrown my way kind of build. Now the other question here would be, do I cut Invig for a health perk? And I feel like the answer is no. But let's see what the effect of that is. So if I go, like, because health boosts off max health, it's not actually off base, even though it says it's off of base. Also, let me go a little bit under this so I can put rabbit in. Yeah. Got our con food set up. Your stats aren't super important for tank. Like your attribute points. Just throw in 500 con, throw in 50 focus, the rest you can throw anywhere you want. Does not matter. Oh wait, there is one tech with it though. There is one tech I forgot about. Um Shoot. Let me unequip this. Let's go to, I need the PvP flail. Because that one drops with loot biasing. I forget what it's called. It's gold cursed. And then with this, it drops with loot biasing, right? So you could get a focus one. Or con one. That would also work fine. And then all you really want on here is smite. Nothing else matters very much. A gem is kind of whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. Probably don't put an empower on there because then people could pen you for armor. You like kind of want to avoid empowers, but you'll probably have empowers on you anyway, passively. And this part doesn't matter at all, but say keen speed so I can move around. I think I did refreshing move before, but you don't really spend that much time on the flail. Like sure footing or something like that. Like this doesn't really matter. It would be a I want to kite a flail kind of option. Earring doesn't really, well actually no, earring matters a lot. It has to be teardrop. If you don't run teardrop on tank, you're trolling pretty significantly. This would be an elemental gem. So we end up with like a pretty healthy stat split so far. Like we got what? We got 15 to elemental, we got 20 to strike. We should have 20 to slash. Why don't we have 20 to slash? I think it's bugged because this is 19%, right? Or like 14. And it says 13 on here. So it's just a visual bug on this end. But it would actually be higher than that. Onk would be 725. This would be 725. This would be 725. And then you have two options in terms of like what do you want to go for stats. The first one is that you hit 500 con, throw the rest into focus or something like that because it doesn't matter. The second one, which is a little bit more entertaining, but I don't know if it's necessarily better, is you try to hit 200 focus. Because if you hit 200 focus, then all your buffs are extended by 20%. Yo, Tom, thank you. Appreciate the raid, my dude. Says the conclusion that the nameplate INI edit doesn't really work. That's my conclusion with the nameplate INI thing right now. So it's like, what's better, 20% buff duration or extra con? So if I go this, my HP is 26k. If I were to bump this down and put the rest in a con, what's my HP go up to? 27k. So it's 26 versus 27. I tend to not think that matters very much. So I'd probably do the 200 focus variant. The idea behind that is your fortified shield rush would last longer. If you're getting hit, would last longer. There's a fortify on the flail side that would last longer. Or it's just like a bunch of passive fortifies with the build that would just last a greater duration of time. Your stone form would also last a little bit longer as well. So a bunch of like weird factors there. But something like this is like what I would consider to generally be best for tank. I think the invig is something people debate on a lot. My opinion with tank is the only times I die is when my entire bar is red in terms of debuffs. If it's not red, I can pretty much live anything as long as I can keep my stamina up. This build with Void Darkplate is significantly harder to keep your stamina up than if you go the wall. Like, it's a lot more difficult. But Sturdy Fortification is like one of the best perks in the game. It got crazy buffed with the new passive that allows it to get extended instead of being like a 5 second, or I think it lasts for 6 seconds right now. And if you get that extended for further enough, they can go up to 9 seconds. With 200 focus, it can be like 10 or 11 seconds. So it's basically a permanent 25% fortify. Fortified shield rush, really good amount of fortify. If you hit an opponent with it, then you can collat with people with it. So you could hit multiple people with fortified shield rush if you time it right. And then each person you hit gives you 35%. So it's possible to get like, with this build, it is possible to maybe hit 150, 180% fortify. Like if you time everything right, because you got 35 from here, you got 25 from the fortified shield. On this side, you have Defender's Resolve, which isn't a fortify, I guess. There's some perks from the Flail that do carry over, like the Barrage AoE, I believe, does carry over to your offhand. So it's like, you just have a lot of ways to gain fortify. Like, you probably go even more crazy with this if you really wanted to, but you just really don't have to.